Well, welcome to the first episode of the Can't Be Hid podcast. Some thoughts on like why I maybe even selected that name. Really, this goes back to over 10 years ago now. I remember myself and a friend of mine that we call Mike O. And he was rapping. He used to do some spoken word, and in one of the pieces that he did, he came up with this concept that called in part of it, I forgot what he said. A city on a hill can't be hid. And I think the rest of the verse went, I'm not I'm not some namby pamby candy kid or something like that. But I always just thought like that phraseology, and the way that it was delivered, I just liked what can't be hid sounded like. And so also I thought it would be kind of like a cool name to name what I'm trying to do here. Because for anybody who knows where it can't be hid comes from, it's a biblical, or it's at least part of a biblical verse where I think from the Sermon on the Mount, as a matter of fact, where Jesus says, a city on a hill can't be hid. Neither do men light a light or a lamp and hide it under a bushel. And in there, he's having a discussion. Those are different ways he's using to talk about the fact that, like, the people who choose to follow after him will be, they won't even help to, but to be able to be light in the world. What does light do? Light helps. Light illuminates. Light brings things to light, right? Light makes things visible. Light allows you to move around with more precision, more accurately, more adequately, more effectively, more efficiently. Without light, it would be very difficult for us to do anything. The only reason why we can operate during nighttime is because we have light. And so in essence, Jesus in that verse is calling the people who follow after him, just like you have light in the regular world, in the physical world that we can see. He's also saying that spiritually you are a light. And so it, we could get even deeper into it also, right? Because he talks about a city on a hill, and we could talk about the fact that a city is not just one person by themselves, but it is a group of individuals together, right? But whether we're talking about individually or if we're talking about collectively, we are saying that a person or a group of people can illuminate others in such a way that it makes life more visible. It makes life better. It makes life a bit more effective to navigate. So yeah, so that is one of the reasons why I do resonate with the name. Turning that short phrase into a name can't be hid. I think it speaks a lot to what I've tried to do in the spiritual work that I've done, and also in the kind of motivational, inspirational, people development work that I've done. A lot of it has all been centered around how do we develop people who can be light in the world. The other analogy that Jesus uses in that passage is also being salt, right? And salt, different ways that you can think about it, right? But in the Old Testament, salts were attached to making covenants, but also we know that during that time and for a large portion of Earth's history, salt was and continues to be used as a preservative. So something that keeps things fresh for a longer period of time. something that keeps things from spoiling, right? And so, yeah, can't be hid. So some of what I want to do on this podcast is really just dive into. Well, let me backtrack a little bit because I think that we can learn from this as well. In a lot of the projects that I've done in the past, I've tried, I've always wanted to kind of teach like a very specific thing, right? At one point, it was, oh, I want to, jump on and develop a podcast or a platform centered around teaching a specific subject, like let's say career development. At other times, it was like leadership development. At other times, it was spiritual development, right? And then at other times, it was maybe a little bit more broad, but still um, narrow enough, but like character development, right? And just all those things that, fall underneath kind of spiritual development doesn't fit under that as neatly, but in general, how do we develop as people? How do we develop in our character and the type of people that we are, right? I think I realize at this stage that I'm not so much a specialist in any one particular area. I don't have necessarily like I don't have a strategic take, or some people have written books. I've written a book, right? But some people have written whole books where it's kind of like, I'm going to take you on a strategy to go from A to B or A to Z, right? And I've put together some of those things in the past. And if I'm working one-on-one with somebody, we can definitely develop a plan. And I usually will have some basic ideas, for instance, like what does it look like to develop career-wise, right? I have some pretty standard things around that I think can be helpful for people to think about in a strategic way. But I don't necessarily think that I have a unique take. I'm not sitting there thinking about that day in and day out. And I'd rather point my ideas as far as that goes comes from people who I think have done an excellent job putting together a strategy, thinking strategically about that particular thing at a level of depth that I'd almost rather just point you to their book or tell you what I learned from their book, right? As opposed to thinking that I'm going to create a whole teaching system around that. I think, and that could be some of where maybe it was difficult for me to have the consistency that I would have liked to have in some of my pursuits such as this. And I realized that no, my strength is in conversation. My strength isn't and learning can happen through conversation. Teaching can happen through conversation. Empowerment can happen through conversation. Motivation can happen through conversation. Much of what I have learned, a lot of it has come through podcasts that are conversational. Some where a very specific topic and a very specific, strategically thought out, lesson plan might be given, but many of them, probably more than that, really have been conversations that aren't necessarily extremely specific. I don't know why I had a trouble saying that just now, but not extremely specific, however interesting, and I think through the conversation, the conversation often provides a richer context so that when maybe something is discussed, even if it's just a nugget, I find it helpful. And so, that may be one way to put it, is that a lot of my learning has come not necessarily through sitting and receiving a whole plotted out syllabus of information where I'm just sitting before learning and saying, hey, this is part one of this, of this learning material, learn this part two. And there's a place for that. There are certain things that I have learned like that, and I've had found helpful learning in that way. But I would say a lot of my learning over the past 10 years especially have come through uh, tidbits, right? I hear something, I hear a conversation, and this thing lands well for me here. I hear a conversation, and this thing landed well for me there. And so it's kind of like, over the years, keep bringing all of those various things together, um, and seeing where they've assisted me in being able to maybe accomplish some of the things that I've accomplished, or at least things that maybe I failed at them. Being able to at least have a category to be able to understand, like, maybe why those things failed, or how I could approach them better in the future, or even just the value of something failing as well, right? Um, so yeah, so I think I really, what I want to do with this podcast is to really just um, discuss a wide range of topics that are just interesting to me, and that I think can provide value, um, for us being faithful stewards of the lives that we have, and and to be agents of flourishing at home and in our homes, in our local communities, um, for our nations, and for the world. And I just hope that the conversations that I have here, whether it be kind of monologues like this, and but hopefully also tapping in and elevating the voices and minds of other individuals that whose opinions I value dearly, and maybe whose opinions maybe challenge me a bit as well. Hoping that to hoping to bring that to the table, in hopes that people will be encouraged by it, people will be motivated by it, people will be empowered by it, people maybe will be comforted by it, consoled by it. Communities hopefully will be better for it, families, people's confidence would be improved by it. But in essence, just things that are healthy to think on. I, some of the stuff that I maybe will talk about won't have anything to do with taking action or personal development per se, right? It's just maybe a matter of perspective on how we see various things in the world, and just how do we simply just think about those things. Um, so yeah, so I could babble on and on about some of this stuff, but um, oh, you said you want a topic? Say, nah, I'm pretending somebody's talking to me, right? But let's see, episode one, maybe just for fun. Maybe I could talk about something light. Let me look through my little list of ideas here and see if I have like anything. Just hey, to get this thing started in a simple way. Yeah, this one maybe is just heavier than what I originally would have anticipated, but um, because it kind of was something that I probably was starting to put towards the back burner anyway, might as well just talk about it, and get some use out of it. The thought that I wrote down, this is a couple of months ago, is that you can do a lot of damage moving with insecurity. I want to caveat that, however, and I think I don't remember where I heard this, but it was valuable for me to hear. Right, that we also perhaps we also spend too much time. So it's two sides, or it's two kind of like conflicting, but both I think important perspectives. On the one hand, if you operate out of insecurity, you can do a lot of damage because you can make a lot of assumptions. You can tend to be a bit too self reflective on yourself, right? See, the thing about insecurity is that insecurity is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean that like you don't think about yourself, right? Like some people might think that, oh, insecurity, it means that your confidence means that like you don't see yourself, you know, you don't see what's inside you, or what have you. Actually, that sometimes that can be the case, but also insecurity sometimes can be you seeing yourself too much, you being so inside yourself that you're just looking at yourself all the time and figuring out how you measure up. It's like you are way too concentrated on yourself, right? And that's not healthy either. So it's a bit counterintuitive, but yeah, like so when you move with insecurity, meaning that like when you move and when you're engaging the world, when you're engaging other people, whether that be at work, whether that be at sports, or whether that be on social media, wherever it may be in your community, you have to be careful not to let your insecurity dictate to you, um, not to let it dictate how you engage, right? It doesn't mean that the insecurity might not be there, but for instance, it can be very easy to start treating someone who has meant you no harm in ways that are unkind, and unfair, because you have an insecurity, not because they did anything, but because maybe their success, or you know, maybe not so much success, right? But maybe just the things that they have access to. Maybe the luck of the draw, even, that we could call, right? Maybe the fact that you know they come from a family that you wish you were able to experience and you never got to experience that, and so you know it the challenges that that you faced through your life, because you didn't come from a family that was maybe you could look back and call healthy, stirs up some of your own insecurities when you get around other individuals who have had access to that, and you can ruin relationships like that. You can do a lot of damage, right? So um, being careful not to let your insecurities lead, and that's something to be intentional about. That's something that you kind of have to learn as well. But then also, sometimes what makes us more insecure is the fact that we don't simply acknowledge and accept the fact that we do have insecurities, right? Um, and because we're afraid to name them, because we're afraid to call it out, because we're afraid to say it out loud, we're afraid to say like, "Hey, I'm actually insecure here." Um, we try to fake the funk, right? And we try to run away from our insecurities, and sometimes the insecurity can give you insights, right? So, for instance, the insecurity can say, "Hey, I wasn't using the family example that I was talking about before, right? Hey, I know that I feel a bit insecure about not me personally, right? But somebody might be saying this. I feel a little bit insecure about the fact that, um, you know, I I didn't feel like I saw a healthy example of family growing up, and I don't know how to operate within, or to create an environment of where a healthy family can thrive, right? Let's say somebody, um, it's it, is that's their insecurity. You could try to run from that or hide from that, but you could also say, hey, this is my insecurity, but it's telling me that there's an opportunity here. It's telling me, hey, I realize that I experienced a challenge and I want something that's more beautiful and healthier than what my previous experience was. So now I can be intentional about, step by step, one step at a time, one brick at a time, building an environment that does foster um, the the mutually exclude sorry, not exclude, the mutually healthy environment that I've come to know is possible, though it may not have been my experience. So yeah, so just being mindful of, how we operate, and how our insecurities can affect us for good and for bad. Insecurity does not have to be a bad thing, right? There's not one person on earth who does not have some type of insecurity about something. Um, and yet we all know individuals who we've seen where their insecurity drives them towards damaging behavior. And yet we know other individuals who their insecurity seems to help them to have more of a sense of a humility, and approachability, and an aura that actually is attractive, that people tend to be attracted to, right? So can't be hid that, that this is, hopefully this is the start of something that, I'm just doing this because I enjoy doing it, and I'm tired of holding um, ideas that I think can be helpful to people. I'm tired of holding it to myself, but hopefully other individuals can listen to some of this and find value in it. Until next time, can't be hid. Average is failure. I'm out. Have a good evening.